It's Complicated is honestly one of the best channels on YouTube. Everybody should go subscribe to him, and everybody should go to his page and watch 3 of his videos in their entirety just to boost his channel. I just don't think he gets as much
As
credit
a man,
as he deserves.
you always have a burden of performance. This is why most homeless people are men, not women. You always, when you don't have the burden of performance, this is why more people who take their own lives are men as opposed to women.
Right.
As a man, you always have a burden of performance. No one is coming to save you. Now, often no one's coming to save women also, but there is this thing with women where it's like, if you're an attractive woman, there kind of is a dude or a line of dudes that are like, I would absolutely be willing to take care of
Well, then that
it.
makes you operate differently. When you know you always have a safety net, there's always going to be some guy that's willing to bail you out of your bad decisions. And then you add in social safety nets like welfare programs. Like an obvious double standard in terms of the burden that we're expected to carry is if you're a man and you can't afford to take care of your kids, you get called a deadbeat, you get your wages garnished, you get thrown in jail. If you're a woman and you can't afford your kids, you have the option of abortion and you get government assistance. Nobody calls you a deadbeat mom for not being able to pay for the kids that you have. So there's definitely a double standard, and it's obvious in society. The duties are definitely different too.
Whereas for me, I don't have big boobies.
Facts.
When it comes to relationships, what does it mean when people say that men have a masculine burden of performance?
I think they do. I think that is the man's job to, provide, protect. It's not necessarily a burden, but kind of a responsibility I think that men are born into.
The societal standards of that are put on men of like they need to be tough, they can't cry, and they have to be like the protectors.
And let's just be honest, who are the police of that societal standard? Of course, men will shame other men, but I just think that it's funny how when guys want certain things, they're misogynistic, but when women want men to be or do certain things throughout society, it's just a societal expectation, as if women aren't the police of that.
Is that burden something men choose or something society forces on them?
I think that is what men choose by being a man, because you're masculine and you have the strength and you have the power and you should be the leader.
I think in some cases you could say that it's forced on them.
That was a complete contradiction. How could the men choose it if they have to do it because they're men? You didn't choose to be a man.
But I think that in 2025 there's 2 ways to look at it. You can find a relationship if you look in the right places where you don't need that burden and where things are split in a more 50-50 sense. And there are also going to be relationships a lot of the time where people expect a certain level of...
Sorry, brother, when somebody breaks into the house, there is no such thing as 50-50. There is such thing as 50-50 in divorce. But when somebody breaks into that house, there ain't really no such thing as a 50-50 relationship. Maybe financially and maybe when it comes to domestic labor, but when it comes to enforcement and when it comes to defending and protecting, there's always going to be an imbalance, and it's always going to be the burden of the man no matter
continuity between from a man, expecting him to do things that, have been expected for a very long time.
It can be a mixture of both, but I think it's more like the pressure from like the fathers of like that's how they were raised, and it's like a societal and like generational pressure.
At what point does this responsibility stop being noble and start feeling like exploitation?
When the men who have the responsibility start doing it for anything and expect nothing in return, basically the definition of a simp. That's when it becomes exploitation. The men decide that they get exploited. That's why we shame guys by calling them a simp. Is basically just a guy who gives a woman his time, money, and attention without expecting anything reciprocated back to him, not even a sense of appreciation. That's what a simp is. So when guys decide that it's okay for them to do these things for the sake of society and for women without compensation, without appreciation or reciprocation, that's when it becomes exploitive. But the men are the ones that dictate what they're willing to tolerate. I think that virtuous men should be reserved for virtuous women. I think that the traditional tasks that men carry and are supposed to do should be reserved for women who also carry their traditional burden.
I think to the point of when women are using and abusing it, right? So like if women are like, oh, you're a man, so pay all my bills and take care of me 100%.
Yeah, but it's your choice to stay with that woman, and it's your choice to be with that woman. You can always leave as a man. It's always your choice, and you should choose to leave if you feel like you're not being appreciated for your sacrifices, because that's exactly what that scenario is.
But then I'm just using you for that instead of an actual intimate relationship.
Can a man reject this burden? And if not, what does that say about his freedom?
So a man can reject this burden.
alone.
However, it might not play well for him in the sexual marketplace.
A man can reject it, but he's not a real man.
What does that do to his
See,
dating?
that's what I'm saying. Women are the police of these things in society, and then when they talk about it, they go, "Oh, it's just a social expectation," as if women are the ones that really expect these behaviors to come from men. And I mean, I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing, but I'm saying they always try to alleviate themselves from the equation to not make themselves look bad. If a man goes, "I want a woman that's gonna fold my clothes, cook me dinner, and have my kids," they'll go, "Oh, that's a misogynistic perspective," but obviously, if a woman wants certain things out of a man, it's just a societal thing. That's why. It's because of the patriarchy.
Options and why?
It makes him very slim because he's not a real man.
Because of the societal norm, there's consequences to
Everybody can tell you what a real man is supposed to do. What is a real woman supposed to do? Can you tell me that?
that
That'd
of
be
like
interesting.
maybe getting a partner is more difficult because they're looking for someone that holds like the masculine standard. But I don't think there's any necessarily like huge consequences for breaking the norm.
I hear this all the time, women saying that the bar is in hell for men because they don't adhere to their traditional roles. If the bar is in hell for men because they don't adhere to their traditional roles, where is the bar for women?
Personally have a career of my own, and I'm certainly happy to contribute. But to some degree, I think every woman wants to be taken care of by a man.
It lowers his chances of getting the woman he wants because he's not meeting expectations.
Yeah.
How can women say that masculinity is toxic at the same time they want men to perform?
Oh gosh.
They say it's toxic because they can't directly benefit from it. That's the answer to that. It's just shaming language to get you to do what they want you to do. They want you to be aggressive and assertive or assertive in general when it comes down to a man insulting them in public, but they don't want you to be assertive when it comes down to you deciding where they're allowed to go. Then all of a sudden it's toxic masculinity. A man can lead a company, but if a man wants to lead his household, then it's just toxically masculine. He's too controlling. He doesn't allow me to pump gas. He doesn't allow me to pay bills. He doesn't allow me to pay for dates. These are all good things. But the moment the woman goes, he doesn't allow me to go to bars at night with drunk men who are trying to hit on me, all of a sudden he's oppressing her. So the idea of toxic masculinity is just a way for women to shame men out of certain behaviors that they don't want. And it's usually when women don't directly benefit from the behavior. They tried to frame going to the gym as toxic masculinity. Like, what? Like, some of these types of women that think that way just want men to be servants. They don't even see you as a person. They just want you to be a servant.
I think it's confusion.
There's a fine line. So I think like in this society, we've kind of lost a little bit of it, but there's a fine line of being taken care of and being a provider to your family and it kind of exploiting that.
Do you think that women have the privilege of being more picky?
Exploiting being a provider for your family? How do you do that? Sounds like just turning the masculine sacrifice into some type of dictatorship or some type of nefarious idea for control. That's all that is. Absolute nonsense. My dad, who was going to work every day at 4 a.m. to provide for his family, wasn't doing it so that he could oppress my mother. That's just dumb.
Because they have more options.
Yes, definitely.
So if men had more dating options than women,
Exploiting that.
do you think that women have the privilege of being more picky because they have more options?
Yes, definitely.
So if men had more dating options than women, wouldn't it be women who had a burden of performance instead of men?
Absolutely.
So why aren't we shaming the women to step up instead of men?
I feel like women are shamed, just not as much as men are.
Why don't women have a burden of performance to become better partners if they don't want to be viewed as a mere sexual object?
I think we like sexuality and we are objects. We're all objects. And just take your role and go with it.
Yeah.
How would you feel if society expected women to always pay for men, open doors, and protect them physically, not as a choice but as a duty? Would that still feel like romance or feel like an unfair burden placed on women?
I feel like we need the men to do that for security.
Why is it not an unfair burden when that's placed on men?
Because that's the roles. It's gender roles. I give you the pussy and you open the doors.
Do we assume that performing makes men more respected or more replaceable?
I'd say more respected.
If men stopped performing, would society collapse or would it simply adapt?
No, I think they would adapt, but it would certainly have a pretty drastic
If
collapse.
men stopped performing, it would collapse. What would y'all say? 2 weeks? I give it 2 weeks. Everybody's civil until the lights are off, by the way. So the moment them lights went off, which wouldn't take very long if no man was doing their job, things would go to hell very quickly. There'd be a lot of people that are dependent on the technology and the comforts that life has to offer them today that wouldn't survive longer than 2 weeks, in my opinion.
Not all the way through, but significant for sure.
I think like maybe women would step up, or like there'd be a few of like, I think everything's changing in the world, so I think if you break that norm, it'd change.
Why then are so many women complaining about being forced to step up and take on more masculine roles?
I think that's tough. I think that's maybe just like the generational being told they can't step up.
Yeah, when they say that, they're talking about having to pay for half of a date. They're not talking about doing sewage. Imagine if women actually got the equality that they said they wanted and they were forced to be half of the sewage workers, how they would be complaining. They talking about paying 50% of a date. That's just your half.
feeling weaker. But I think there's plenty of women that have stepped up.
Think about just the infrastructure right here. We're in Las Vegas, right? The vast majority of the guys people who built this are men, right?
Yeah.
A lot of men are controlling the world and providing a sense of structure in their homes in this world. Society would be in a very strong state of chaos if men were to be removed.
Right.
Why do you think a man's value is often tied to what he does instead of who he is?
I think those two are intertwined. What you do is part of who you are.
Yeah, I think that everybody's value is intertwined with what they do. I think that everybody should be judged based on the decisions that they make now and have made in the past. And you can be forgiven for decisions you've made in the past if you make better decisions now, and that can be equated. But everybody's past and current should be paid attention to when it comes to who they are as a person.
A lot of times I feel like guys present themselves as this is my job and this is what I do, and this is like, that's like their selling point for themselves. So like surface level you don't get past.
That's because that's what women care about.
If a man stops performing, stops providing, competing, or achieving, what happens to how people see him?
He's held at like a lower value, I'd say.
He's a bum.
So do you think men perform for women's approval or for their own sense of identity?
I would hope it was for their own sense, but I feel like their dick rules their mind, so it's for the women.
So what's the difference between a masculine burden of performance and happy wife, happy life?
There's no difference.
Well, then how do you address women's sense of entitlement without first addressing men's sense of obligation?
Hey, it's our roles. I'm entitled and you're obligated. It is what it is.
Yeah, guys, you guys got to start valuing yourselves more. Realize that you're irreplaceable. This is because men don't even value the sacrifices that they make, and they believe that they are replaceable, so they cower and they don't defend themselves. When a woman wants to do something he doesn't want her to do, he'll just tuck his tail because he's afraid of her leaving him. He'll lie to himself and say it's about, oh, I'm an empathetic person. It's a very thin line between being empathetic and being pathetic. And at that point, you're being taken advantage of. When you have all the responsibility and no authority, and how this lady's just sitting here looking all smug right now because there are so many dudes that maybe she's put into this position or are living in these conditions right now, that's just insane to me. You got to start valuing yourself. That's the reason why men are being taken advantage of. It's because they don't understand their own value. They think that they're replaceable because women have made them feel like they're replaceable because a woman can go and get another penis. That doesn't mean she can go and get another husband. That doesn't mean she can go and get another man that's actually willing to protect and provide for her, that actually cares and adores her. So if you're a man that actually does those things and she doesn't want to listen to you or show you any appreciation, you have to be willing to let them walk, because then they don't value you. And they'll tell you exactly what they value. If you say, I don't want you to go here and wear this with these people, and they go do it anyway, they value doing that more than they value you in the relationship. And if you've been sacrificing for that relationship, that's just unfair. And you have to start seeing it as that. There are a lot of women who are losers. There are a lot of men who are losers too. But you cannot forget that there are a lot of women who are also losers. You cannot forget that just because a woman has a pretty face and a $15 Fashion Nova outfit, she may be a loser. Very well so. Yeah. If she doesn't prioritize her family and prioritizes going out and drinking with random strangers who you think is bad for the mission that you're supposed to be geared towards, that might be a loser. You might be with a loser.
Society built on men's sacrifices, or does society take those sacrifices for granted?
I think right now they're taken for granted, because I think it's just like almost the masculinity isn't
Because
looked
men have
at as such
allowed
a
it.
positive thing right now.
Do you think men perform for women's approval or for their own sense of identity?
I'd hope it's their own sense of identity.
Ultimately, it is for their own personal kind of growth and whatnot, but I'd be definitely lying to you if I said that women's choices are not something that influences us.
What happens to a man that fails to perform? Does society empathize or discard him?
I think sadly discard him.
Right.
They discard them. That is just the harsh reality of the world, right? So I think as a man, it's really just perform or not.
Right.
And yeah, if you're not performing, if you're not providing, doing X, Y, and Z, you're going to be discarded. So if you want to be a winner, if you want to have a girlfriend, X, Y, and Z, you got to perform.
So how does the pressure to perform affect men's mental health or identity?
Probably in a very negative way.
Nobody cares. Nobody's ever gonna care. So focusing on that aspect just doesn't even matter as a man, and that's why all that mental health BS for men just don't work. You got to teach men how to be productive. We don't give birth. Women give birth, so they're always going to find a sense of meaning in life. At some point, if they have children, they're going to find a good sense of meaning. For men, we don't have that, so we have to toil. We have to suffer. We have to sacrifice. We have to go out and create our meaning, and that's a hard thing to do. And if you're not actively trying to do different things because maybe you're just sunken in a job or maybe you just have this depressed mentality, then it's just going to keep sinking you in because you're not. Men are going to feel significantly more powerful when you're productive, when you're using your masculine energy and gearing it towards your passion and pushing it into something you like to do. And obviously, if you're a guy that was in war and you've seen somebody get their leg blown off, it's a little bit different. But if you're a guy, you're 50 pounds overweight because you eat bad food, you watch porn all day, you only getting 4 hours of sleep, of course you're going to be depressed. You don't even really deserve to be happy. Happiness is earned. It's also very fleeting, so you really shouldn't gear your life towards just chasing happiness, but it's also earned even the small few moments you get it. Women are born with their sense of meaning inherited, meaning they can create life. Men can't create life, so we have to create things. And if you're not creating things and being productive, you're probably going to be sad about it. Unless you're a woman or a kid, happiness is earned. That's just my opinion, though. I'm not a doctor or anything. Just for the sake of YouTube, I'm not liable, blah, blah, blah.
I'll be honest, probably in a very negative way. However, it's just like you're a man. It's like put up with it, learn, grow, become better, or fail.
Right.
Yeah, it's very significant, and I think the vast majority of depression cases are based on that.
Well, I know men have the highest rate of suicide. So I know there's like a lot of pressure on men to perform correctly.
If women are loved for being and men are loved for doing, is that a fair arrangement?
I think that is the way the world has been for many years. I don't know if I can say it's fair, but it's just what has been the case.
How does this expectation shape men's relationships with women, work, and themselves?
It's almost like, what would be the right word? Like you do something for me, I do something for you. So it's more of like, what would that word be?
Transactional.
Yeah, transactional.
Does defining masculinity through performance trap men in a role they can never rest from?
I think it does, actually. Yeah. And I think it does. And I think it is the burden of the man to take on that extra responsibility to, take care of your woman, take care of those extra responsibilities, make sure that she's happy.
So once
it's crazy because even though the man has the heavier burden in society, it was never the men that started to complain about their traditional role. Think about that. Even though we're talking about this right now, all the difference in mental health, all the difference in what our duties are and expectations, it was never the men that even started to complain about it until people started to say they wanted equality. And then we were like, hold up, but this isn't really equality. That's when you usually get men complaining about it. And it's really just to combat the idea of equality. If you wanted real equality, we wouldn't have certain hiring for police officers and firefighters. We wouldn't be lowering the standards in the military if you wanted real equality. Get rid of all female sports, by the way, because actual equality means that there's only one league and all the best players play in that league. So all female sports would be gone if there was real equality. But it wasn't even the men that were complaining about this. It was the women.
Responsibilities make sure that she's happy.
So once again, what's the difference between a masculine burden of performance and happy wife, happy life?
That I can't answer.
Are there cultures where men are valued for simply existing, or is this burden universal?
I feel like this is definitely more universal. I feel like across the whole world, most people would imagine that the men would be the person to be the provider, to be the protector, to be the head of the household kind of idea.
It's interesting. I think there are cultures where men are certainly given a higher sense of value, but in those cultures also I've seen that there is a greater responsibility for them to perform and provide.
Why do people praise men for being providers, but shame them for wanting appreciation?
I never shame a man for wanting appreciation. I give my man appreciation every day, and you better
Okay.
ask him.
Okay. Oh,
Would society
She
tolerate
said it,
women
not
being
me.
told that they have a feminine burden of
that's
performance?
her way. That's her way of showing her man appreciation. Who am I to say that it's wrong? Hey, she said it, not me.
I think inherently they know that. Maybe a little un-PC to go out there and say that publicly, but inherently it is part of the culture, and I think they know that.
Why do people praise men for being providers, but shame them for wanting appreciation?
Yeah, I think it goes up to the idea that men shouldn't be outright asking for...
Because it works. It works. Look at where we are now. The social contract between men and society was you build and maintain infrastructure and be willing to go to war and die. Because of this, you get a certain level of status. You get a certain level of authority as a man. You could potentially own some land, own a house that's actually yours, and a family. That's been taken away. The social contract between men and women is you would do all those same things because the masculine burden is to protect and provide. The female burden is to have children. For a society to exist, you have to have a certain amount of kids, right? Women are not holding up their end of the bargain. The birth rate right now is 1.5. No society has ever survived, by the way. No society has ever survived a birth rate that dipped below 1.9. We're at 1.5 currently. A man could literally get a family today and do everything right, and a woman, just because she says she's unhappy, could divorce him and take half of everything that he owns. Is that fair? And that's going to be a big question that's asked very soon. Why should we be willing to adhere to our part of the social contract when being a part of that social contract offers us nothing anymore? But the reason why men aren't getting appreciation really comes down to the fact that we've allowed it. We've allowed ourselves to become second-class citizens in a country that we're expected to uphold.
Be doing the hard work and naturally going out there and receiving it.
If a man is expected to serve others, but can't question it, does that sound like duty or slavery?
Yeah.
Slavery.
Sounds like slavery to me, man. Ultimately, I do think the man has the ability to control his own destiny, and he does not necessarily have to confine to the standards of his environment. You always have the freedom of choice. You can move.
How would you describe a system that rewards men only if they never stop performing?
Well, I mean, that sounds a little bit tiresome, but I don't know. I feel like that's just kind of how life is. It's like it's one thing after another. There's never really a break. And hopefully if you have the right people in your life, you're going to get that recognition, you're going to get that love, and you're going to get that care, and it's going to feel like it's worth it.
I compare it to a hamster wheel where you're constantly running on this thing. But ultimately, I do think that there's a baseline in society where you can free yourself from the hamster wheel and you get more and more choice if you so choose to live that way.
Yeah.
If freedom means the right to refuse servitude, do men actually have the freedom?
I think they have the freedom, but are they willing to take that freedom? I feel like so many people are stuck in their ways that it's scary to change from being an NPC.
Yeah, men don't have to do anything for anybody. We're not forced to do it. We live up to the task because most of us want a family. That comes with a lot of responsibility. Usually it comes at the cost of our freedom. Generally speaking, men will choose freedom over responsibility until they have to become responsible for people they love. And that generally happens when a man gets a family. But outside of that, men don't have to sign up for anything. Men are signing up for this because they don't understand. They have a lack of appreciation for what they do. And they've been told by society that what they do isn't important when it's really the only thing that upholds society. So guys have just been convinced that they should expect nothing in return for what they do. And I don't understand why dudes sign up for that.
Can duty and freedom coexist, or are they always in conflict?
I think they're always in conflict. We've had duties, and you can see a lot of people here hate their jobs, but it is their duty to go out there and provide, take care of themselves, take care of their loved ones. The goal is to find ways where you can create more freedom in your life. You start off with a lot when you're young, and I think if you make the right decisions, you allow yourself more freedom.
The easiest way to keep your freedom and maintain your freedom is being frugal and not going into debt for stupid shit. You don't need a $40,000 car, probably. You probably don't need an expensive home. Old Southern home will do. You don't need marble counters. Wood counters will do. Not going into debt is the easiest way to maintain your freedom. The moment you go into debt is the moment you get on the hamster wheel. And for most people, there is no getting off. And that's why they start you off at 18 with $40,000 of debt, convincing you to go get a degree that usually people don't even use. So, yeah. So the best way to stay out of that hamster wheel and slavery is to never go into debt. These used to be old Christian principles that we used to live by somewhere along the lines, probably because materialism, it got corrupted. Now people just see debt as a normal way of life, and it really is not normal to be enslaved. You are literally enslaving your labor to another person. It's indentured servitude, essentially, but at least you get a nice, a Mustang out of it, I guess, right?
What would masculinity look like without the burden of performance?
I don't know. I feel like how I look at masculinity is like the protector and the strong one. So like without performance, I wouldn't really know.
I don't think they could necessarily exist without each other. There's always some level of performance, and that burden of performance is what keeps you honest and moving forward.
Does rejecting the burden of performance make a man free or lost?
I think, honestly, I would say lost. If you look at a lot of young men smoking, doing drugs, partying, once they find careers, once they find the right woman, and they find something that really keeps them going, I think that's what'll help them find meaning in their life.
Can men redefine what performance means on their own terms?
Yes.
They can,
Yep.
but it can be hard. I think you have to recognize that we live in a society, and a lot of our inherent sense of worth comes from how we can help others in society.
Is masculinity about freedom or about responsibility?
I think right now in society, it's about responsibility.
So then how can men redefine what performance means on their own terms?
Well, it's going to be a slow process. It wouldn't be like an overnight change, but it's like getting out there. Like I think even like gender right now is being reevaluated. So I think everything can be reevaluated and changed over time. Would I know what that looks like? No, because I'm a female. So that's hard for me to look at what that would be.
Core of it is responsibility, but we also have a responsibility to care about our freedom, right? This is the inherent American dream. You have to go out there and fight for it, though, and it's a responsibility to go out there and pursue it.
Why is it that men will reluctantly accept their fate anytime an injustice is pointed out? It is what it is, or that's just part of being a man?
It goes back to all these questions that, as a man, I feel like you do have a burden of responsibility and more responsibility in general.
To a higher standard.
To make, your loved ones, your children, and your wife happy.
And how would our society react if we told women that they had a feminine burden of performance?
Probably not good.
Yeah, there's that idea in our culture sometimes that we can't speak up for ourselves, and that is just complaining, we don't want to hear about it. I see that argument, but a lot of it is you have to go out there and advocate for yourself.
Yeah, well, men have been neutered. They've been completely neutered, completely emasculated, and it's obvious.
Well, how can men's issues ever be heard if we're told that real men don't complain?
You're told that by women who want to control you. You don't have to listen to that. You're supposed to do whatever you're supposed to do anyway, and you will if you are a real man. So women who use this whole term real man are using it as a manipulation tactic to control weak men because they know that real men don't give a shit about what women think about real men. And they know it. They know that it's a manipulation tactic to control weak men.
Honestly, going out there and complaining without a solution can be sometimes a bad idea, but outright, if you go out there and advocate for yourself, provide solutions in society, I think that's a really masculine thing to do, actually.
Why have men been tricked into thinking that it's unmanly to advocate for themselves?
There's a lot of feminist content out there where women are just I think women do ultimately drive the dating conversations, and men want to center around being what they want from them. So I think there is a factor there, but if you do it in an intelligent way, I think it'll work.
Do you believe that women were oppressed back when they were expected to be traditional, back before feminism?
Yes.
If so, how are men not oppressed by holding them to a traditional standard today?
They are oppressed.
Why is our society not acknowledging that?
I feel like men are not speaking up for themselves. I feel like women fought for where they're at now, and men stay quiet.
Is it possible that men stay quiet or aren't heard because they are oppressed?
Yes, absolutely.
So how are men supposed to be able to be heard if we're told that real men don't complain?
I feel like the same way a woman spoke up. If women stayed quiet about they should be feminine, they should cook, they should clean, stay home with the kids. If women stayed quiet, there wouldn't be a change now today. They wouldn't have the option to be who they want to be today. So I feel like if men spoke up, it slowly but surely, it's not an overnight thing. It'll become a change will happen.
Why can't men seem to fathom that things could possibly be any other way?
I think it's because right now you're shamed if you're not to that standard.
Yeah, they allow women to shame them. I didn't think that actually works, but women can actually control male behavior by telling them that you're a bad guy if you don't do exactly what I want you to do. And there are guys that actually listen to that.
And so, like, to take the risk and to change the path is a scary thing.
When you're born that way, hey, that's the line God gave you, and it is what it is. And you take your role and you move in power, or you succumb to it and become a bum. It's up to you. And as a woman, you'll support your man and make sure he is the highest of the highest, so that way you guys can go to the top and raise your children, or go be single people. It's up to you guys.
Lastly, Harriet Tubman once said, "I freed 1,000 slaves. I could have freed 1,000 more if only they knew they were slaves." How does this apply to modern men?
Well, it's like the whole, like, there's so many people that are NPCs and they don't know it. So it's just if you're stuck in a pattern, you don't see, like, even in a relationship, you don't see the problems unless you're an outside perspective. So I think it's that of, like, you don't even know what's going on sometimes because you're not taking an outside view on it and you're just stuck.
There's so many trappings in life, man. I think that people don't know what their life could look like if they were able to be freed from the so-called matrix, or, you know, all the trappings of life. It takes some time and it takes some self-discovery, but I think it's ultimately worth it.
Great video by It's Complicated. Everybody should honestly go subscribe to him and watch 3 of his videos. Let me know in the comments below if this video was a W or L, and give me the HBO special. That's help brother out special. Hit the like and the subscribe button for more content. Till next time.